tense moments in front of City Hall today where protesters who say they are unhappy with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Liberal policies came face to face with counter-protesters. The counter-protesters say they are taking a stand against the far right and racism. Police intervened on several occasions to break up clashes as barricades can keep the two sides apart. A large showing on both sides as the confrontations continued throughout the afternoon. Good evening. We saw the clashes in Peterborough and we saw them in Quebec back in September. Today, similarly, the rally came face to face with counter-protesters here in Toronto. You can see it's a relatively quiet scene here in front of City Hall, but all day long it's been a pretty strenuous on Toronto police. And the man organizing this event said this was an anti-Trudeau rally, but he had some very controversial groups marching alongside with him. And there were counter-protests here by the dozens. They say this was clearly a white supremacist rally and it has no place here in Canada. The rally started off with a small group of protesters behind a barricade of Toronto police officers, oftentimes keeping counter-protesters at bay, a much larger crowd.
We intend to build a mass movement against fascism, racism, and white supremacy in this city.
Though the organizer called it an anti-Trudeau rally, many of them here to counter-protest today say it's a hate rally, deeply rooted in racism and white supremacy.
You can see even by the signs that they're carrying, by who is over there on the other side, these are far-right white supremacists. They are carrying some Nazi regalia. They have the Soldiers of Odin logo. This is a white supremacist rally, and so we are countering it. We, representing anti-racist groups across the city, are saying that this message of hate is not welcome in Toronto.
The man behind this rally maintained his anti-Trudeau stance and a show of freedom of speech, but we wanted to also ask about the controversial groups who were also there with him.
I'm definitely not a white supremacist.
What about the groups that you associate yourself with?
Groups are going to show up to these events, and I can't be responsible for every single individual or group. You're talking about the Soldiers of Odin or the Sons of Odin? Which group? The Sons of Odin or the Soldiers of Odin? Well, I don't think the Soldiers of Odin are here.
But shortly after, Soldiers of Odin, a far-right group who shares the same name as an anti-immigration and anti-refugee group based in Finland, arrived. It happened as we were speaking with this York University professor who says he's been involved in anti-racism causes and movements dating back to the 1970s.
You've got Soldiers of Odin coming in here, and they're coming to fight. Okay? These are their street fighters.
And what's that?
See, they're already starting to push people. They are wearing Northern Guard on the back of their jackets, which is a fascist organization saying we represent the north of the world, the white Aryan race against the south.
More friction as the far-right group, who in the past has been accused of having a racist agenda, makes its way through the crowd, clashing once again with counter-protesters. And the city tells us the organizers of this rally did not have a permit, but because Nathan Phillips Square is deemed public space, one isn't necessarily required. Meanwhile, John Tory tells City News there is no place for hate in Toronto. In a statement, he also says, quote, everyone has a right to protest peacefully in the city and country, but protests that include hatred, bigotry, racism, sexism, or homophobia are not welcome here. Meanwhile, there is another far-right rally scheduled to take place in Toronto's Q Beach on November 4th. It's being organized by the same group who attempted to hold a white supremacist rally in Peterborough back in September.